What if the biggest thing standing between you and the wealth that you want isn't your budget, your income, or even the markets, but the money story you've been carrying around with you your whole entire life? Welcome back to Betty Smart Friends, where we have real conversations about money, work, life, and all the fun in between. Today, we're diving into how women experience wealth and how understanding our money stories might just shift everything. I'm Betty Wang, host of Betty Smart Friends. I'm a certified financial planner who helps women feel more confident and less alone when it comes to important money decisions in their life. Please join me in welcoming Wendy Wright, a leading financial therapist and money mentor. Wendy brings a rare blend of expertise as a licensed therapist, money coach, and business owner. She combines psychological insight with the financial know-how. Her pioneering work in financial therapy has transformed countless lives by helping people understand the emotional side of money. Today, Wendy is here to guide us through women's money stories, past, present, and future, and how becoming aware of these stories can help us expand our capacity for wealth, ease, and confidence. Wendy, we're so glad you're here. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh yeah, Betty, I'm excited to be here. I love talking about this, and I think we'll bring some things to your audience that may help them improve and enhance their relationship with money.
Yeah, well, I mean, for listeners who may not be, who've never heard of financial therapy, can you
hmm
share what
hmm
financial therapy is and maybe a little bit of how you came to find your way to this work?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I would imagine uh, probably when I speak on this, often like 90% of the audience has never heard of financial therapy before. And so I was thinking we could have your listeners raise their hand, but then some of them might be driving, so, or doing other things. So don't worry about raising your hand. But yeah, really, kind of acknowledging this is a new phrase, financial therapy, a new field. And I think a pretty cool one. Like, I love it. I really kind of stumbled my way into it. So I'll share a little bit of that story. But first, I'll define it a little bit. So if it is, let me offer first, like, um, there's research now that supports that upwards of 90% of our financial decisions are emotionally based. So it's really powerful for people who are now nodding their heads going, oh yeah, that's me, whether it be where to invest or what to buy at Target. There are emotions involved, not just data points. So recognizing that this emerging field came together for this blend, often we call it the intersection of money and emotions. And it is so powerful and still so new that I hope people just hurry up and find me or a financial therapist and begin to talk through their money stuff because it's incredibly healing. I can see it session after session, meeting after meeting, even just in the body language of my clients, their shoulders drop in a good way, like not in a defeated way, like in a relaxed, like, oh my gosh. And so often, like what they have thought was, how they thought they were broken turns out to be just some things they haven't really recognized or named emotionally. So it's super powerful and allows that ability to have this safe place to talk about money, which is not everybody has a safe place to talk about money. So that's really powerful too. Um, so that's sort of the definition of it. When we're working with it in sessions, in a financial therapy session, I talk about money every time we meet. So it is what I tend to think of for my clients. It's very courageous because often they'll say, "Oh, I'm dreading this," because we dive right in. It's like kind of the one of the main questions I'll start with is, what have you noticed this week in your money thoughts and feelings? So boom, we're in it. And that really allows, also, it gives them a safety of like, yes, we're going to talk about it. I don't have to wonder if we're going to talk about it. I know we're going to talk.
Well, it normalizes it.
Yes.
We've been taught so much by society that this is not okay for us to talk about out loud.
Right. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And then also, okay, so I'll shift a little bit into how I found it, because
Yeah,
that's a little kind of an interesting story too. I've been a therapist for over 20 years. So licensed marriage and family therapy is sort of the letters behind my name and things like that. And in that, I had worked, but before that, had been a mortgage banker, a business owner, a realtor, um, worked in other kind of businesses, things like that. And then as I got my therapy degree, and running a therapy practice is a business. So there's also
absolutely.
that, you know. And then I was, when I became a single mom, because I know you've talked about that, I think, with some of your other guests, like the impact of becoming a single mom. So I thought I'd lay that out there too. Like that was an impact here. Became a single mom and got a full-time job because I became suddenly the sole provider for two teenage boys. So, ta-da. So I went to the eating disorder field, and knowing and believing that that was a pretty safe niche specialty to have. Eating disorders weren't going anywhere. So I was working in all different levels of care. And as I got into high levels of care, which by that levels of care, what I'm describing is where people are there for either all day or 24/7, the patients are there. I began to notice some very interesting, um, we'll say, things. I began to notice a lot of boxes were being delivered. I began to notice a lot of gift giving was going on. I also began to notice a lot of, some of my other patients would constantly talk about how they didn't have enough money. And then I would find out from their family members that, oh, well, she has tens of thousands of dollars in the bank. So I was putting all these little money behaviors um, together and looking at this, and began to talk to some of my clients, patients, about it, and began to notice this real intersection of money and emotions and decision making. What I also began to notice was a very distinct parallel from the eating disorder. And by that, I kind of package food, body, and exercise behaviors shifting into the realm of money. And by that, I say spending, earning, saving, gifting, all that pocket of decision making. There was like this real parallel in the language they would use. So this is very oversimplified. So if this will make sense, but somebody, maybe they use their eating disorder to manage their fear of rejection or fear of failure. And so now they're in treatment, they're trying to not use their eating disorder. They began to perhaps make a purchase. And I literally would have a client, we'd sat down, we looked at what she was buying, and she said, yeah, I want to get this shirt because then I think I'll fit in. Or then I think I'll look thin, which when we're working with eating disorders are not about food or looking thin. So there's that. Um, so that means, okay, what does that mean for you? Well, it means I'll be accepted, or I won't be a failure, or all those kind of words, like the verbatim, the same words were coming out. So I literally began to Google, has anyone else noticed this intersection of money and emotions? And this was about 10 years ago. The Financial Therapy Association, of which I'm a member, was beginning to be formed. People were just beginning to coin the phrase, and it just connected for me, totally connected for me. And I think because I had the business background, and I have a real comfort with numbers and talking about numbers, this niche of a specialty of therapy really connected for me and felt easy. Um, and comfortable, where a lot of therapists would say they do not want to talk about money. In fact, they will send their clients to me when it comes time to talk about money because they're not comfortable with it. And I'm not trashing them. They have told me this. So, it's like a thing.
So, do
Um,
people normally have a traditional mental health therapist, and then you are sort of an additional support or focus area? Is that a fair way to just say that that's how you
mhm.
work, or sometimes maybe?
Sometimes. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they'll be doing the other work and we'll add this in. Often they will have had therapy in the past, but felt like there's just something about money that's not working, not coming together here. And then they'll reach out to me because in a lot of ways it's kind of it's both like super foundational to mental health issues, but also kind of the last frontier because people haven't thought about, oh, I'm going to actually talk about money.
100%. I mean, I would imagine, with eating disorders and food, you can't avoid food, and the same with
Mhm.
money, right? There's still behaviors that you can't avoid money and be an adult in this world,
Right?
right? So uh, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, folks just don't even think about some of these ingrained patterns that has
Hmm.
always seemed so normal that it could be kind of
Right?
detrimental to their mental health and their pocketbook, right?
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. Because their pocketbook, their bank balance, their income, all of these things are impacted when they're not really aware of what's going on in their money thoughts and feelings.
And out of curiosity, do women or do folks come to you um, because their money situation is so bad, or do they have they picked up on these um, like something's not quite right, or do you think there's
Mm,
just more literature or information out there about how there's the connection between these two things? How are folks,
yeah.
coming to you?
Well, I know this is probably a horrible answer, but I'm going to say all of the above. Yeah,
No, it's not. It's
absolutely. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
it is a new frontier, right?
Yeah.
And it's not something that folks think about very
Hmm.
much,
Yeah.
or if they do it, maybe they've hit a real um, block in their
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah. And sometimes that block is that they haven't opened their bank account in
Oh yeah,
months or
the
years,
hiders.
so
Yeah.
it's, yeah. So it's not necessarily things are bad. It's just they really don't know.
Hmm.
Or maybe things feel really bad. Sometimes things feel bad, but they are actually okay because of that sort of belief that they're bad with money. And that leads them to thinking, oh, then my money situation must be bad. So there's a lot of different ways in which um, people will reach out, what will prompt someone to reach out to me. Sometimes it's maybe I got a new job, I'm making more money, so now I would like to look at this so that I can handle this, work with this money in a different way. Or maybe they have um, often it'll, I do, one thing I often hear is, I make really good money. I don't know where it goes. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like what's happening here? Because I feel like I make good money. Or perhaps they're in a relationship and there's a common phrase like, we get along with everything, but we fight all the time about money. And one of the things that we'll begin to do, because one of my principles is take the money word out of the sentence. So then I'll ask them, what are you fighting about? If you don't use the money words. And it's often really, really hard for them to kind of go under it because it feels like, oh, no, 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 it's the money. But once we begin to unpack that and go under it, they begin to see the deeper issues and then the healing can happen once we see the deeper issues, whether it's how you communicate with your partner or how you communicate with yourself.
Yeah, I mean, all of those are important. I think what you brought up is women do often come to me and say, I'm not good with money. And it's this
Mhm.
message that I always ask, where did you get that idea? I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, that's common. I'm not good with math is very common. Um,
Mhm. Yeah. Kind
so
of the
I'm curious,
belief
like,
that,
what do you hear? Like, what do you
yeah.
hear when they're coming in? I mean, to me, it seems very normal because
Mhm.
I hear that all the time with newer clients.
Yeah.
And it sounds like for you too, but I mean, where is this coming from? Or what other common stories do you hear women coming to you with?
Mhm. Yeah, that belief if I'm not good with money is really powerful. Sometimes what we will unpack in that is, I do think there's a kind of a common belief that you have to be good with spreadsheets to be good with money. And that is not true. And in fact, people who are really good with spreadsheets sometimes like, aren't living a satisfying money life, even though they've tracked it to the penny, all the time. So I like to break up the good bad. language. Like, so that's one of the things we'll do. One of my principles is there's not really good and bad with money. So what we do is to go under that is begin to say, okay, what do you do that sort of equals bad with money? I'm using air quotes for people who might be listening. And what do other people do that equal being good with money? And so it may be like, oh, well, they pay for our dinner every time we go out. That means they're good with money. So then we begin to look at that because that doesn't actually mean they're good with money. It just means that they paid for, but if I'm
Yeah,
working with that
we
client,
that's what I
they
tell
may be,
folks. Be
yeah,
careful. We don't know what's under the hood.
exactly, exactly. But when we feel like we're bad with money, then everything someone else does is a judgment tool for you. It's like, oh, I couldn't pay for the dinner. I'm bad with money. Oh, they went on vacation. I'm bad with money. Oh, they have a financial planner. I'm bad with money, or whatever it is. Like that, it just becomes evidence instead of really recognizing that. So, what I like to do is shift clients to language of I would like more of, or I would like less of in my money life. So maybe I would like to open my bank account more often. I'd like to log into it more, not perfectly or anything, kind of things like that. So that's a common one. Another common one is the belief that that quote unquote, I was never taught about money. No one talked to me about money. No one taught me how to do this. So
They did. You
yeah,
just did it. They weren't with words.
exactly, exactly. So I'll take them back into, and this is part of the money story you mentioned too. Like if we go back into their life story through that money lens and begin to see things such as a common one is because most everybody went to school, and most of the time at school, different kids were wearing different clothes. And that's where kids first become aware of sort of money and economy, different birthday parties, different things like that. So we come back into looking at their story through the lens of what they picked up exactly, what was implied, what they heard and saw, and then what they began to decide about money. And then that helps them begin to see, oh, okay, this is where I was learning that.
Talk a little bit more about money stories. Like, what does that exactly mean to somebody who
Hmm.
has no idea? I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
we
I'm
talk
glad
a
you
little bit
asked
about
that.
financial therapy, but it's
Hmm.
also really digging into our money, our own personal money stories. But for somebody who's not even familiar with that term, how would you explain that?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked, like, what is a money story? Because you're right. We're beginning to drop that phrase around more and more. I'm speaking on it more and more. So people are beginning to become accustomed to it. But to define it, I will say we're going to look back at your life story through the lens of money. And so perhaps we look back at their eighth birthday, but with the lens of money. And that's where they got a $2 bill or $5. And then what did they do with it? And they don't remember what they did with it. That's a story. They remember exactly where they put it in their room and then their siblings stole it. That's a story. Or maybe they remember exactly where they put it in their room and their mom stole it, and that's a story. And each of those, then, I'm just using that as an example, but
Yeah,
each of
yeah,
those
yeah.
moments lead to some beliefs and behaviors, such as, oh, it's never, I'm no good with money. I didn't remember what I did with that $5, from that birthday present. I'm no good with money. Belief starts, behaviors start. Or money is not safe. Or I don't have a safe place. It's not safe for me to hold money if the money was stolen, or people in my life are going to take money from me. All of these things lead to behaviors often that are very disconnected for people. They don't know why. Perhaps they um, don't put money in savings. And they haven't really pulled the thread all the way back to see some of these foundational moments that begin to develop some beliefs about themselves and money and how to do money, so to speak. And that's what we mean when we talk about telling the money story. We go back, we look through that lens. And it's not always money, like it's not always a literal $5 bill. It might be like, we were saying too, it might be like, oh, they have different shoes than me, or they got a car. What does that mean? How does that happen? Like it's all of the different things that show some sort of resource allocation.
And, how do we how do we bring that forward to our present life? Like, how do we help
Yeah.
ourselves? And on the flip side, these are going to be too many questions, sorry.
Mhm. That's
But
okay.
I mean, on the flip side, I definitely have clients who are savers, and I think it's speaking to those, the folks who track everything to the penny, where there's
Hmm.
also that side of the coin where when they think they're good at money because they save every penny, but they also don't enjoy their money. It's their as a security blanket almost, or as proof that they are successful, right? Their bank
Hmm.
account tells, and their 401k is in their investments. How do we bring some of this awareness to the present moment? How does that help us?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think of it as when we begin to look forward, I'll ask the question, what story do you want your money to tell? So we looked back to see what story developed and how that impacted behaviors and where you are today. So then we want to look forward and say, okay, what story do you want it to tell? This often stumps people because there's a lot of energy. Tell me if this will make sense to you, Betty. There's a lot of energy looking back. Like a lot of tracking is backwards.
Yep.
A lot of it is about what you did or didn't do. And that is actually not helpful. When we really begin to look forward and actually ask the question, what story do you want your money to tell? Uh, First, it stumps people. They're like, I don't know. I haven't thought about that, and, or I know I just don't want to run out of money or whatever, but they haven't done the numbers. There's like this energy around it. So being able to look at how you built your current patterns helps you begin to see how you want to build the patterns going forward. So building what do you call it? I use the word money plan or money map quite a bit to help, or a money sketch. I like all of those kind of words because we're talking about looking forward, and we're talking about also looking forward with flexibility. Because one of my principles is we don't want to just build a plan. We want to recognize that a plan is only as good as the adjustment process. And that's where people get
100%.
really stuck.
Yeah,
They don't know how
flexibility
to.
is
Hmm.
people don't realize how important that is because things are
Yeah,
going to change. It's
absolutely.
frustrating. It's annoying.
Absolutely.
We can only plan for
Yeah.
so much.
Right? I know. And it's hard and it's scary. And if there's like perfectionism or shame or any of these kind of things, then even kind of building a plan feels very uncertain, or it needs to be highly rigid. A lot of times I'll find people, the way I'll talk about it, because this is true. And if you go back to the eating disorder world, those behaviors tend to be either highly rigid or highly chaotic. And
Mm,
so money is the same. We tend to gravitate toward one way or the other, or maybe often we'll flip from highly chaotic, and then maybe it's, I'm not going to spend any money this month. And
right.
neither of those work, but they feel good in the moment. So being able to look at that and understand kind of where you're coming from and why either of those ways is appealing to you can really help you as you begin to look forward.
And how can a woman know that, hey, maybe I need a little of this digging a little deeper?
Hmm.
I think this through line of parallels of eating disorders and money speaks more clearly to women because we all know somebody who we've loved who has been affected by
Hmm.
eating disorders, and I think it's helpful to explain it in that sense, how that also translates to money. How
Hmm.
can women eating disorders? I feel like um, eventually the person who's suffering says it's time, or other people notice that there's a problem. Money is a little harder to sort of self-diagnose. What signs should we all be looking for that hey,
Hmm.
this I might need a little bit of support here.
Yeah, yeah. Not only I might need some support, but this could get better. Because I think a lot of people feel really stuck, like this is my money life and this is the way it's going to be and it's awful. And how could it possibly get better?
I
Because I've
love
already
that it can
failed
get
at
better.
every
Yeah.
budget. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So recognizing that there are some ways that I encourage people to think about this. First of all, if someone's listening to us talk and we're a little bit into this discussion and they've already been nodding their head a lot and they're just like, oh my gosh, that's me. If you're really connecting to how I'm talking about the role emotions play in money behaviors, then yes, you're already somebody I would say reach out and let's talk, because just by the act of beginning to talk about it can begin to take the pressure off and begin to make a shift. So let's talk about maybe even some more specific things that I would say. I often will ask the question, what percentage of your thoughts are given over to something about money, whether it be income, spending, debting, investing, what you're going to buy, how much you're going to pay for something, like any kind of money thought, what percentage of your thoughts are given over to it? In other words, we're looking for how preoccupied are you with this, or are you experiencing intrusive, repetitive thoughts? Are you over and over and over again writing down? Because I used to do this, writing down all the bills over and over, every few days, writing them all down again, saying, am I going to have enough money? Am I going to have enough money? And not thinking there's any other way. So there's ways in which we're looking for how much of your life is given over to some sort of thought. And often the answers I will get are, at least 80% or higher. It's like you lose sleep, you dream about it, you think about it all the time. Even when you're shopping, maybe you're always looking for a bargain and that makes you feel better or something. There's like something in that too. So there's lots of different behaviors that will show up. So if we look at how much of your thoughts are given over to it, um, that is helpful. But you're exactly right. This is a parallel. I have I think 6 or 7 parallels between the food and money world that I do when I do the talk, Betty. I call it the intersection of money and milkshakes because both of those things are scary.
Yes,
So
yes, yes. No, I mean,
does
it
that
is
make sense?
interest. Yeah, no, it is really interesting how, it's, they're kind of, they're very similar.
Yeah, there's some interesting parallels here.
Yeah,
But you're right. One really key thing is neither of these can be cold turkey while you work on it.
right.
You
It's
don't
not
get
like you can
like a
avoid it
month off.
forever. Right.
Right, right. Yeah. And because so it's helpful to recognize and even if you're avoiding money is being preoccupied with it because usually
Yes.
you're still thinking about it. You're like, oh, I don't want to look, I don't want to know, or kind of thing. So because the question you're asking is it sort of like depleting my satisfaction with life? Or is my money life bringing more satisfaction? And I really key in on words like sufficiency or satisfied, not anything that feels like we don't need perfection. We don't need, sort of anything that feels like pie in the sky or anything like that. We just want to, what feels good? What feels good? And if it's not feeling good, let's, reach out because once we begin to talk about it, it can feel better.
And what about women who say, I don't know what feels good, right? How do you get to
Yeah.
that point, right? Because there's so many women that said, I
Mhm.
don't know. Money's always been on my brain. No matter
Right.
how much I make, no matter how much I save, it's there. And I kind of thought it was normal and that
Hmm.
it's just what we do. But I think what financial therapy and this behavioral financial world is we're learning is that there's more of a balance than maybe we thought before.
Hmm. Yeah.
How do you coach your clients to find what's a good place for them? Because I know
Hmm.
it's going to be different for everybody, right?
Yeah, it is. It really is. Um, One of the things I start with, and anyone that that's watching or listening just can start with this, is to begin to add some thoughts and feelings to their money. They can start with transactions. And by just starting by adding thoughts and feelings, that usually adds some awareness, and then awareness can lead to change. And then, so kind of looking at that, it would be something, it could be as simple as, uh, I put gas in the car and I had no thoughts and feelings. It was very neutral. Or I put gas in the car and I loved that I filled my tank up in one spot, because I still remember back in the day when I could only do $2 at a time. So I
Yeah,
still get
remember that?
jazzed. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
I had change and I would say, okay, I have $1.50. That's all I get.
Yes, for gas. Yeah, so every transaction has the possibility of some thoughts and some feelings. And so, what that's doing though also is pausing. That's a big part of the change process, is to pause. A lot of our money life is very, I use the word like disconnected or unconscious, and we're moving to having it be more connected and conscious. And when we do that, and notice I'm not saying bad to good. We're not looking at that. We're looking at, okay, what do you want here, and what do you want it to be? Then we can begin to, uh, sometimes I'll say, if we're going to do something different with money, if I'm coaching someone on doing something different, I will kind of say, let's try it on, just like you would try on a t-shirt in the store. And you might try on that t-shirt and be like, oh, this is scratchy. I don't like it. I'm not going to wear it. So put it back. Or this fabric is so soft. I love this. I'm going to buy, 3 of them because it's the softest thing ever. We all know this. We've all been,
Yes,
when
we
you're
all
shopping.
we
Yeah,
understand what we're talking about.
exactly.
Yes.
We could do the same thing with new money
Yeah.
behaviors. So say maybe someone wants to begin to save, put money in savings. And I say, okay, well, let's put $10 in there, and then let's talk about how it felt. And then we put 10 more dollars, and then we see how it felt. And it's um, very, very helpful to have that. One of my other principles is to approach all of this with compassion, curiosity, and zero judgment. And that's what we do if we try something new. We also don't judge it, because it doesn't matter if it worked or not. And that's where this is really different. The coaching that I offer from a financial therapy standpoint is very different sometimes than just fill in the blanks and go your way. So we're really looking at it, and then we're pausing and we're seeing, okay, what happened when you did it and how did it feel? So yeah, it is really powerful, because sometimes, I'd say often, um, my clients are going places they've never been before. And they say that. They'll say that after we've begun to work together. They'll say, I didn't think this was possible, but I'm really noticing my money thoughts are changing. I didn't think this was possible. We haven't had a fight about money in 2 weeks. And we talked about money, and all these different things. And so there's a lot of ways in which I have tools in my toolbox to bring in, and we talk about them, but we also want to see, does this work for you? Because if it doesn't work for you, for that person, we don't have to use it. There's lots of other ways to do it.
And that's what I tell clients all the time, right? Is there's no one right answer. If someone's telling you
Mhm.
that there is, it's just not true, right? They're trying to sell you something. There's so many different avenues.
Right. Right.
Because
Yeah.
women
Yeah.
get so they just want to know the steps, and a
Uh-huh.
lot of my clients are very type A, and they just tell me what to do. And
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, it's what you're saying. We have to try these things on, and sometimes
Mhm.
we take the bits and pieces that make sense.
Yeah.
Um, and you've talked a little bit about understanding our money stories and how that can, help attract or increase our capacity for wealth and
Mhm.
more opportunities. Can you, explain or talk a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question too, Betty. Like, how can telling our money story, how can doing this financial therapy work actually make a difference in our wealth? And wealth is a big topic. It's a big word. It's one of those words that has a lot of meaning to a lot of different people. When I'm talking about it, I'm typically talking about some sort of resource base, and but it's really important for the clients to put their own words to it. So let's say we're building a resource base. Then we want to begin, and I can say, what story do you want that to tell? If they open a savings account, for instance, if this is a new behavior for them, and we open a savings account, we want to work first of all to name the savings account according to its job, or the investment account. whatever we're doing. And fortunately, most banks and accounts will let you go in and do some edits. And so the savings account may be called at first safety and security. Okay. But then we want to go further. I want to say safety and security. I want X number of dollars in here. And what happens when we do it that way is every time they log into their bank account, they see the plan right there in the names of the accounts. And it makes a huge difference because they don't have to remember everything. And they don't have to like think, where does this go? And what is this happening with this? So we may start with safety and security. So then let's say we've built up some safety and security and we want to go to the next thing. We're building an investment account, or we have a 401k, which really, in the history of our timeline, the whole idea and the concept and the phrasing 401k is relatively new. It's only a
Yes.
couple of generations old. And so
Yes.
it's okay not to understand how it works. But often women that I work with feel like they should, quote
Totally.
unquote, already know these things. And so sometimes we'll define it and then we'll talk about, okay, what do you want this for? It's often when there's a lot of money insecurity and lack of belief in themselves, they might be afraid to call it something like retirement because they don't think they can retire or deserve to retire or something like that. So that's fine. We'll come up with a word. And often you may work, I don't know if you're using this phrase with your clients, but a lot of times I'll use the phrase work optional life so that,
Hmm.
like, okay, well, does this feel better? Or uh, maybe they call the account, I want to have enough money so that I won't have to work. All of that can be the name of the account. It doesn't matter. So that they can begin to do that. Then, so we kind of work with the words, then we work with the numbers. And this is great because it's usually very telling. So then I'll say, okay, what if I'm just going to throw some numbers out there. What if there's $10,000 in that account? And they're like, oh, that would be great. I'm like, okay, well, whose money is that? What's its job? And we talk about that. Then I'll say, well, what if there's 50,000? And what if there's 100,000? And they'll get to a number like, well, that's impossible. I'll never have that number. So as you know, and I know, that means they're not going to get to that number because they already said it was impossible. So I'm like, what if it was possible? What's its job? And then the flipping it over to that line where we begin to do some math. What does it mean to have money that pays you money? And a lot of times it's just a sort of a money function that they don't really understand how it works. And so in a financial therapy, money coaching setting, it's safe enough that they'll ask the questions or they'll say, yeah, I don't know what that means,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So we begin to open that up and we talk about it and explain it. Then they start to get a vision. But a lot of it is looking at the numbers and getting and talking about each number at each threshold with pausing with those thoughts and feelings because often there's sort of an invisible ceiling that they don't know and they have but they're avoiding it and they don't realize they're avoiding it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That makes a lot of sense. And that comes, that brings up another question. I often have clients who say, I never expected to have this much money or to make this much money. And it brings, I don't know if that's common for men as well, but I hear it a lot from my clients. And,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about how that's like how that is sort of a mindset thing that we need to work
Mm-hmm.
through. Or, I mean, do you come across those sorts of behaviors or those feelings? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
maybe that I don't deserve this, right? And I have to remind my clients, you worked really hard for that money, right? And
Right.
you're getting rewarded with it
Yeah.
financially, but I think there's a disconnect on how they feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're bringing up some really good points too, Betty. One is kind of talking through just the relationship to the income. A lot of times there are women might be making an income that's higher than they ever dreamed that they could.
Yeah.
And because of that, they have such a hard time accepting that they're actually making it. And then they don't know what to do with it. So maybe they avoid looking at it or they stash it all away and still live on $5 a day or whatever,
Yep.
like there's just
Or they
different
give it
ways,
away. They try
or
to
they
give it
give it
away.
away.
Yep.
Yes. Oh gosh, that's a whole another, that's a big topic.
I mean, it's
Yes.
right.
Hmm.
It's all the
Yeah.
behaviors you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's the
I'll say a
stashing
little
it.
bit about that too, because the
Yeah.
giving it away, when we really begin to look underneath that, there is often what is happening is an energy of pushing it away. And it looks good on the surface, you look generous. I'm using air quotes again. And there's nothing wrong with generous, we're not judging it, we're looking at what's underneath it.
Right.
And often, yeah, if it's pushing it away because you don't know what to do with it. And that's worth a conversation. It's worth looking at that. So, and then we also have, okay, then what to do when the resources accumulate, and what's the point of that? And perhaps what is it, maybe they have struggled with their relationship with fun and relaxation and enjoyment. Maybe that's a big part for them. Maybe there is such deep scarcity that they feel like there's never enough, and they don't really know how to calculate because the fear is so great, it gets in the way of doing the math around what is enough. And so it's helpful sometimes to sit down with someone that they trust, or in a financial therapy session, or with someone like you that can sit down and say, let's run the numbers. This is how we look at, will there be enough? Because you can answer that question. So looking at those things is really powerful, and looking at, perhaps they feel, um, often there's like this guilt, shame, kind of shamey guilt thing that happens too, that if they're not comfortable with their income amount, they overgive at work, and they tend to overgive everywhere because, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have this, I need to make up for it. So we want to look at that too. um, and then the other one that this really brings up as well, that's a big deal right now, and I've been speaking on as well, is the wealth transfer dynamic.
Yes.
And really
That's
looking at that,
really,
this is
yes.
real. Money is moving through, typically family channels, and there are so many emotions attached
Yeah.
to this.
People don't feel
And
deserving. They didn't
right,
earn it.
yes,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
some guilt.
Yeah. And so I specialize in wealth transfer communication and helping people talk about, it's one of my specialties, helping people talk about what it's like to receive, or maybe what it's like to give. Because sometimes the givers, I won't say sometimes, I'm going to say often, the givers haven't talked to anyone about the money that they're giving, because money's not talked about. Sometimes the givers haven't even really talked to themselves about why they're giving money. And I've had beautiful work with clients who are on the giving side, and helping put words to what they're trying to communicate, because a lot of it's being communicated without words, and that's really beautiful. And then clients that are on the receiving side, and what story that's going to tell for them, and shifting that emotional ownership of the money, the resources, is huge. Also very, very emotional. So yeah, I could talk a lot more about that, but that's a big one too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big topic,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it is not a lot of families don't talk about it,
Hmm. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
how they would like their money to be used,
Hmm.
um, for the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For people who don't really, have that sense of what does it mean to feel good about wealth or earning wealth, like how do
Hmm.
you give them sort of I guess a goal, maybe goal's not the right word, but
Hmm.
a guiding star,
Yeah.
something that
Vision.
says, okay, you're going in the right direction, right? I
Right.
can't tell you exactly what it is, but
Hmm.
how do you help them find someplace that feels good to them?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, first, one of the big things that I'm doing is helping them talk about it. Because once, if something is like not talked about at all, and then we begin to put words to it, that in and of itself can bring up a lot of healing and really help visioning. And then I'll go back to sort of the trying on clothes idea. Like when we begin to try on stuff, we begin to think about, if they're like, oh, well, I really want, I want to give this money away. I want to enjoy this money. Like what do we want to do with this? What kind of buckets or, little pockets or whatever metaphor works for them. Because often they haven't really spent time envisioning what it could look like. And so we try to unpack that, open it up a little bit and try stuff on. And I think one of the things also that's really important that I help people with is that it doesn't have to be perfect. There's a lot of perfectionism that runs underneath money
Yes.
emotions and decision making.
And
And
fear of
yeah,
making mistakes. Yeah.
right. And that's one big thing about money is it is going to always frustrate perfectionism because it's never done. Money
Yes.
is always in motion. And that's why we come back to that idea of a sketch or a plan or a vision and begin to put things together and dream and have some ideas. And maybe we start with next month and next year and in 10 years. And so we kind of build on things like that too, because they're just not sure. They're not sure how, maybe they're not sure, maybe they haven't really understood what is a required minimum distribution. Like, what does that mean? And then, oh, if I get that money, then what happens to the rest of it? So maybe it's just explaining the money that we'll do, or maybe it's okay if you give this to this place, or if you decide to go on this trip, like what do you want it to look like and feel like? Like each of those things can really help them come into a vision of what they want. But we absolutely, it's all very in pencil so that there's lots of ways to make adjustments. They don't feel like they're locked in to
Yeah.
anything either. Hmm.
Yeah. And how do you see, what I do as a financial advisor and what you
Hmm.
do? How do you see them working together, or what's the intersection there? Right. I think
Yeah.
folks might be confused. We've talked about the delineation between maybe a traditional therapist and what you do, but there's also,
Hmm.
there's overlap between what I do and what you do.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times, the way I would describe it is the that we actually go together really nicely because while we might be um, while okay, I'm going to cut right there because I turned my Siri on. Now I just turned her back off. So
You turned what off?
I pushed a button and Siri came on my
Oh, I didn't even hear it.
computer.
Okay. I'm going
Okay.
to write
Okay.
418. Okay.
Okay.
47. Okay.
All right. Back to it.
Okay.
Um, so now remind me your question before we get back to it.
Oh, shoot.
Let's do
It
it.
was the financial planning and how
Okay.
financial advising and
Hmm. Yeah.
financial therapy kind of work together.
Okay. Yeah. So how financial therapy and financial planning, I think, go together really nicely when there is this understanding that, yes, there's a lot of emotion in the room. When you're meeting with a client, just knowing there's a lot of emotion in the room and acknowledging that, it doesn't mean that you have to then ask all the emotions and tend to them. But I think it makes a huge difference when I'm talking with financial planners and they see this, they acknowledge it, they understand it. That is really powerful because that energetically makes a difference for the client. And so when I'm working with people on kind of going underneath the surface and looking at the story and looking at the behaviors and helping identify what they want their money to look like, then you're able to take that work and build on it and actually show some of the mechanics of how that works. Maybe some of the vessels of putting money in different places and how that works, and some of the projections. I think you're able to do that as well, but you're also able to, I think, normalize for them in so many ways that money is, like we said, never done, that it is a big topic. It can be scary, and that you're a safe place. That is what I encourage my clients to look for in a financial planner, because no big surprise, a lot of my clients have avoided reaching out to financial planners because they don't know. They don't know what to ask. They don't know what is even the point. And so when we begin to talk about that, then they start to get a vision for it and see how that's going to work. Or if a financial planner is working with someone who then you begin to see, hey, I see a lot of anxiety here. Would you like to talk about that even more with Wendy? And then we can keep working on building this map or building this plan, or like, so there can be a lot of back and forth support. What do you think about that? Is that those words make
Yeah.
sense?
No, I mean, I think, I think of clients where we build the plan, um, again, building in flexibility,
Yeah.
but there's such a level of scarcity and fear that no matter what the numbers say, no matter if it says you are 100% like never going to live under a bridge and eat cat food, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what you do, there's
Mm-hmm.
still this level of fear that is not numbers based, right? And that's obviously not, it's something we talk about on a not as deeply as you would, right? And I certainly
Mm-hmm.
don't have um, the mental health and education background that you have to even delve into that. But it is something that, for me as a financial advisor, this is, I think, a natural offshoot, right? Because it's so interrelated. Money
Mm-hmm.
equals emotions, and people, and that's how we base, like you said, 90% of our financial decisions, not
Mm-hmm.
just on the numbers. And I think that's, even when people hear it, they don't quite, um, they're not like, oh, it's not me, not me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it is having the permission to explore and also being okay with that. I think a lot of people are like, I'll figure it out. Money should be practical, but it's actually very
Mm-hmm.
emotional.
I know. And it's kind of like, that's actually pretty frustrating because you think, oh,
Yeah.
well, I filled in all the blanks and it should
Right.
be easy and it should be all these things. And then
Why aren't
why
I
do I keep
happy?
doing it
Right.
right? Why don't I feel better? Why do I keep doing the same thing I told myself I would never do again and all this stuff? And like,
Right.
yeah, it's pretty frustrating. And I think that's a part of like the process is acknowledging that frustration and that it's real. It's absolutely real.
And so for women listening to this, I mean, if they want to start thinking about rewriting their money story, um, while with intention and also while
Hmm.
being self-compassionate, right? I mean, that's something that all of us work so hard on, because we're very compassionate to others, but it's really hard when we're directing it towards ourselves. How can they
Hmm.
start thinking about these things, or are there tools that they can reach out to, reaching out to you, but are there also
Hmm.
other resources that you might say, okay, start here if you're not quite ready to reach, sometimes it's just baby steps.
Oh, it's yes, it's often baby
It's
steps.
often
You're
baby
exactly
steps,
right.
right?
Yes. Yes. Like even if you go to if you go to my website, it's wendywrightfinancialtherapy.com. And even there's the baby step of you can take a quiz. First of all, it's a money shadow quiz, which kind of helps begin to show like what is underneath the surface that might be getting in the way. And there's free resources. Like I have a financial therapy journal that has the ability to get the first chapter for free. And that is all about taking a breath, um, compassionate curiosity, and zero judgment. And then building, I use intention and then movement or action so that we're able to name where we want to go with the intention. And then what is that next action step? Maybe that is today I will log into my bank account for 2 minutes, like whatever. It's like, breaking that down so that it's the baby steps. If they're ready to begin talking about it, they can do a free discovery call with me. Most financial therapists, the Financial Therapy Association has about 100, working, working financial therapists. And most of us will start with a free call, 20 minutes to check in and see if it feels like the right fit, because that's really important.
Usually
Energetic
important.
fit is
Yes.
huge. Yeah. So having that ability to do that. But I think too, even beginning by maybe listening to a self-compassion meditation, like different ways to soften your internal language, because I can easily say that bullying yourself about money never works. It might work in the short run, but it doesn't actually work in the long run. So building in more compassion can be really powerful. I love the work of Dr. Kristen Neff on self-compassion. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a great resource, and it's just building in that kind of like a muscle of self-compassion can make a difference. And acknowledging it, maybe sharing with a trusted friend. Wow, I'm really struggling, really struggling. I don't understand what's going on with my money, but it doesn't feel satisfying. So beginning by having that conversation can be really powerful too.
So, you're taking on so many of these, these different emotions. How do you maintain balance and peace in your own life? How do you maintain the self-compassion for yourself?
Oh, yeah. Turn the tables on me, Betty. Way to go.
This is my closing question.
I know. Totally fair, totally appropriate.
Well, it is
Right.
true, especially when you're taking on, so many of us women, we um, lead with compassion and empathy, and we forget about ourselves. And so it'd
Mm-hmm.
be interesting. And I'm always looking for tips how you do
Yeah.
that for yourself.
Yeah. I do listen to self-compassion meditations, so that I actually do that, and I find that super helpful. Meditation is helpful in general, and then also I get my own support. So I have someone I can talk to about it, whether it be a counselor or a coach. I have people in my life where I get that support, and then also um, things like family time, friend time, nature. Living in Colorado, we have great access to, I believe, you probably do,
Yes, we
great
do.
access to nature. And each of those things kind of brings me back to a sort of a general tip for women, is that if you engage in something that impacts one of your five senses, you are usually going to interrupt intrusive repetitive thought patterns, like about money, for instance. So if you listen to a meditation, if you go outside and experience a different view or a different temperature, or if you have a conversation with someone and you're engaging both, a lot of senses are going on at those times. Those can be really helpful ways to begin to interrupt patterns that I have found over the past. So I love I love the question because it's super important. There have been times where I have not felt a lot of compassion for myself, and I have had to do my own work around that, for sure. And it makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference. I have a very different approach to my own money now than I did 20 years ago, where it's soft, it's compassionate, it's flexible. It's something I have decreased anxiety and stress about through my own money work. And so all of those things come together, and I find them really helpful.
Yeah, I think people will be or are surprised when I've done the work to see how much the quality of their life changes. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a lot
Yeah.
of stress and a lot of heaviness thinking about these things
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Um,
Huh.
so,
I mean,
what are the best ways?
imagine,
Oh, yeah, it's true.
I'll
Go
just say it
ahead.
lastly, like,
Yeah.
imagine a life where you didn't stress about money, where it
I
felt
mean,
calm and
crazy.
connected and clear, and it's possible. But sometimes if you don't know what it looks like, you don't know how to get there. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
Hmm.
They need a guide.
Hmm.
And what are the best ways to find you? You mentioned your website.
Yeah.
Is that the best way to connect with you?
I think it's a great place to start. WendyWrightFinancialTherapy.com. I also I do have social media. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, Facebook. So there's ways in which that can guide you. Sometimes I try to put tips in there. Getting on my email list is a really powerful tool as well. It's a good sort of way to dip your toe in,
Yeah.
because there's a blend of both encouragement, maybe notices if I'm doing a workshop, things like that, or tips. I try to give, like, hey, you could try this, or do this, or try this journal prompt maybe, or listen to this podcast where Betty and I talked about all these things too. So those are great ways to connect. And right on the website, you'll see the link to book a discovery call if you're ready for that. I invite you to give me a call.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of women they sort of stalk for a while first, right? They want to know what
Uh-huh.
you're about and what your message is.
Mhm.
And it's partly that fear of rejection, right? They want to make sure
Mhm.
that, okay, we are the right fit. This might work for us.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that approach. And, Wendy, thank you so much for your time. This has been really
Yeah.
eye-opening. And I think for listeners who've probably never thought about money this way, I think it's going to be um, really different in a really unique way of looking at things and hopefully opening their eyes to what's possible.
Mhm.
And your work reminds us that money isn't just numbers, it's emotions, history, identity, possibility. It's all these things. It's when women understand the past, honor the present, and intentionally shape their future money stories. The
Mhm.
entire experience of wealth can feel expansive, supportive, and aligned. I wrote that. So,
Well
but I
said.
really feel like it is
Mhm.
something that, what you do is so powerful and helpful to improve people's lives. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, for joining us on today's Betty Smart Friends. And until next time, stay curious, stay kind to yourself, and remember you deserve a relationship with money that truly supports the life that you want.